Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from Locked On Ole Miss alongside Daylan Flowers, and we're going to talk a little Ole Miss football because that's why you tune in. How you doing, Daylan?
I'm doing good, man. Everything is going pretty good.
Nice. That's what I like to see. Did you have a decent break? Are you back in Oxford yet?
I head back to Oxford next Monday, and everything. If I've enjoyed my break, it's been a much needed relaxation time just to be around the family and travel a little bit as well. But everything's good, and I go back next week.
Yeah, and you went to the Peach Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, I was there.
Okay. How was that? Did you have a good time?
It was good, man. The atmosphere was really well. I think the fans on both sides showed out really well, but I think our fans were engaged for a different type of momentum than Penn State fans were. I think the excitement around everything that we had done leading up to that game was pretty exciting for our fans. It's just the attitude that we had gotten to this point with this kind of bowl game, and we kind of wanted to win a bowl game under Lane Kiffin as well. So that was really important for us. But it was really fun, man. It was an exciting time, and I think the players represented what the fans have been shown all season. You know, the fans have been really well traveling this year. And I'll continue to give them props on that. And they did the same thing in Atlanta, man. It was fun from start to finish.
Yeah, and they went from the Peach Bowl, and before that, they had crazy momentum in the transfer portal. And then after the Peach Bowl, I think we are starting to get ready for the next wave of transfer portal
Yeah.
wonderfulness. And I think right now they're looking at a lot of offensive linemen. And of course, Ole Miss is looking for a running back potentially because of Quinshon Judkins entering the portal as well. What do you think's going on in January, and where should we turn our eyes?
Um, you know, of course, there's a lot of noticeable attraction going on right now. Our offensive line has had a lot of movement over the last couple of weeks, and when I say that, I mean we've gained some players that have announced they're coming back. And we've also seen the announcement from players from a lot of different schools come out and enter the portal that I think our eyes will be counted on. I know Diego Pounds from North Carolina has I think will visit Oxford soon. If not, has already been there, and
Yeah.
he has. And I like to say a lot of times when players get to Oxford, 99% of the time we usually don't let them leave. If we get a player to Oxford, I just have a good strong sense of players buying into what our coaching staff has implemented and what we see in the foreseeable future for this program. And I think he is a player. He's like 6'6", 6'7", like 320, 330 pounds. The guy is when you think about an offensive line, you want some tough and nose grinded guys, but you also want a guy that is stands out amongst other offensive linemen, and kind of puts a little bit of fear when walking up that field against defensive lines. And that's what Diego Pounds does. He played all 12 games, started also games for North Carolina this year. Young guy, but has a lot of experience as well. And I think that benefits us in a lot of different areas on our offense. And I think we have a pretty good chance of getting him in. That kind of Twitter notification has been going in and out with him recently. So I would expect him to come and really test the waters a little bit more with other schools, but I would definitely put us at the top of the race for him. There's other kids out there. I know we talked about Lance Hurd a little bit a couple of weeks ago from LSU, a young guy. I think was a 5-star coming out of high school as well. Really talented guy. I've watched some of his highlights and film, especially from high school as well. Really good footwork mechanics for a young offensive lineman, which is really hard to see a lot of times in college football world when you're putting young guys on the line. But he's done a terrific job at balancing his footwork mechanics, and I think that's something that really benefits us in the pass run game. So I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to look in that area of development. But I also say that in no means I don't think we're done on the defensive side of the ball either. I think we could target maybe another linebacker or two just to get a little bit more depth in that position. And I think it's still going to be an exciting time. We're no means done with the portal. I think there are still some holes to be filled, especially with the news of Quinshon Judkins leaving. But I think we got some good reputation going with Ulysses Bentley announcing he'll be back, so that's a big push for us at that position. But there's some work to be done at different positions. But I think Quinshon leaving ultimately gives us the ability to work in a different demeanor that maybe we didn't have the ability to do with him here.
And I spoke with somebody today that would know the comings and goings inside the program. And the way it was put to me is keep an eye out who visits campus at the running back position, running backs that visit the campus that they bring in. Pay attention to that. There's 2 or 3 names that they're trying to get to visit campus at the moment, and maybe in this weekend. So to when you hear that, Daylan, what does that make you think?
It doesn't shock me at all because I think we're seeing an aggressive edge from our coaching staff this year. I truly believe everyone is buying into this upcoming season. This is the year we've had the announcement of so many of our key starters returning, and so many initiations of transfer and top elite transfer players coming in. I think this is the year that people, players, and the staff are really saying, we leaving everything on the field this year and we're going after every single objective. And that initial objective is to host a playoff game, but it also is to reach the national championship game and win the national championship game. And that should be our standards now. We've reached that point. And I think our players have bought into each other. Honestly, I think you've mentioned it over the past week since Quinshon Judkins has gotten the portal. This has now become Jaxson Dart's team. And I think that's a good piece for us because I really believe he loves where he's at. He loves his teammates. He loves his coaching staff. And I think we kind of saw that balance of other players buying into him for that reason. And, I've seen on Twitter since Q got in the portal, saying that, we would love to have him back or don't rule out a comeback. I think that vote is sell. And I don't think we should even pursue him trying to come back. And I say this because I don't know if you remember this, but you asked me this maybe a month or two ago, basically that same scenario, asking if I would want to, pay $1 million for a running back to come back or use that type of NIL money to diverse into different positions on the field. And I told you that I would love to use that into different positions in the fields because in no means when I say this, I love Quinshon Judkins. He helped elevate this program. But when you can develop different parts in your offense, we can elevate Ulysses Bentley to that elite type of level. We can have Rianasco come in and use him and utilize him to a different type of level than we've seen. Riscano, excuse me. I know I barred his name. And I know there's a Bama running back that just hopped in the port. I can't think of his name.
Rydell Williams came in.
Yes, and I wouldn't be surprised if we target him, go after him, try to get him to visit Oxford because I think he can also just give us another bit of depth in that running back position. So there is times where we'd like to see different things go in and out, but I think Lane is kind of established being really run efficient here at Ole Miss. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we do go out and get another guy just to help balance things, to also give our offense a different threat. I think we could also maybe use another receiving running back a little bit, a guy that's more polished in the receiving game maybe. So there's different aspects and maybe how we look at it, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we go out and try to get another running back for sure.
Yeah, and I think for the next few weeks, people need to get used to hearing me say this. Ole Miss is not looking to replace Quinshon Judkins. He's the best running back potentially in college football. What Ole Miss is looking to do is to build a running back room to where you can run for 2,600 yards and 29 touchdowns. And you're not going to find one back that can do that. But if you find your Snoop Connor to Ulysses Bentley, Jerry and Ely, and Kedrick Riscano's Henry Parrish, that can lead you down the road to doing that. Because if you have an 800-yard rusher, a 600-yard rusher, a 500-yard rusher, and Jaxson Dart runs for 500 yards, your running game has been about effective as it was this year. It's a little bit more spread out, and probably your offense might have a chance to be better because of what skill sets each running back can bring and how often they are used during a ball game.
Yeah, and I also like to when people can't really think of that dynamic initially, think about it like our receiving core this past year. I know there was one point that Trey Harris, Dayton Wade, and Jordan Harris were all in the top 10 receiving yards in the conference. So think about that imagination for maybe a trio of running backs, and our quarterback for maybe having 300, 400, 500 rushing yards as well. Think about just a different balance. It may not be one superstar, but just think about a balance of opportunities for each guy to come in and ultimately bring something different to our offense. So where teams, on the defensive side of the ball are watching film, it's not easy for them to adapt to what we're bringing because we have so many different weapons and opportunities to bring to initiate some type of spark on our offense.
And what this unit can be offensively next season is kind of special. When you think about this, Jaxson Dart, I don't know the exact number, so nobody rail on me if I'm a little bit off, but it's about 3,800 yards away from becoming the all-time passing leader in Ole Miss football history. That's a number that's completely doable. If you look at what Eli Manning did at Ole Miss, that's almost the same trajectory. Him and Jaxson Dart, from his sophomore to his junior to his senior year, they almost did the same thing. Eli threw for 3,800 yards in his senior year as well. So I think it's a situation. I think Jaxson Dart has a chance to leave Ole Miss holding every single meaningful record besides maybe touchdown passes. I think Eli is going to end up holding that one when everything is said and done. But I think most everything else is going to be a Jaxson Dart joint.
Yeah, and honestly, we haven't seen a quarterback like this with this many weapons under Lane Kiffin for 3 years. And I think that is something that you also have to think about. When he came in, I think he was so raw, he really hadn't gotten the opportunity to make amends for himself at USC before he got here. So when he got here, he was honestly a raw guy. And now he's kind of developed. Okay, I'm a name. I'm a household name now. And so when we're going into this upcoming year, it's what the expectation is. And I said a couple of weeks ago, what was one of my goals? And I said I'd love for him to be, in New York come the end of the year and be a Heisman finalist. And I think that should be his goal. And I think he has the opportunities to reach that goal. And when I say that is the sky is the absolute limit for this offense. I really believe that everyone is kind of converged into what we are. And even the quarterback situation, I think Walker Howard and Austin Simmons are raw talents, but have the capability at this point now to really go out and try to produce as well. So I think they'll also help just raise Jaxson Dart's level a little bit more in terms of potential ability. So we'll love to see how this offense continues to work and down the road and see what kind of objectives we go after in the portal right now. But we have a lot to be excited for at this stage and moment.
One of my favorite things on Twitter, and this is just kind of changing the subject a little bit, but Austin Simmons is throwing a little bit as a baseball pitcher, and he's getting his arm ready to do that. And he's throwing right now at about 80%. He's slowly raising the velocity up to where he throws it hard. It's just a thing whenever pitchers start throwing a little bit, you don't immediately go out to 100% effort. You hurt yourself doing that. You have to get your arm in shape. But he's throwing at 80% and throwing 90 miles an hour fastball. That means that whenever he is really humping it, he probably gets it up to about 95, 96 miles an hour.
Yeah, and I think I think we've seen a little bit of raw footage from him a couple of weeks ago in practices. The kid has a really good arm, and I think the adaptability of him playing baseball helps elevate that opportunity when he does cease to use it in the football world. I'm excited because I truly believe that once this season does come in, that we have some go getters at the quarterback position. And I think that's something to be just as excited about as right now and in the future that it is. And so it's exciting to see where we are with his potential. I think he has grown to be something that, we haven't seen much of, but I think fans can really be excited about just in based on raw potential. And I think as well, the quarterback room has helped elevate where we see the future of, just this landscape of college football. So it'll be fun to see how he develops, and it'll be fun to see him in baseball season too, man. I think we are looking to execute a little bit more than we did down the stretch last year after our national championship year. So I would like to see how Bianco kind of implements him. Um, but it'll be fun because I think our pitching has kind of been iffy, and especially now with Hunter Elliott, now we know probably won't come back at all this year. We'll see how Austin does get a chance to go out there and show what he's worth.
It's really interesting this season because this is the first off season since Jaxson Dart's been here where there's absolutely zero quarterback competition.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, we're talking about after next year building the statue for him, type situation for Jaxson Dart. But low key, and nobody's going to pay attention to this stuff. Starting right now in spring is a nice competition between Walker Howard and Austin Simmons. And the one that's going to follow Jaxson Dart, a lot of the ground is going to be laid over the next 8 months or so. So that interests the heck out of me.
Yeah, and it does. And honestly, just speaking from, being at the spring practices in the spring game last year, I honestly saw a lot of competitiveness from Walker Howard. I think the kid has a lot of just willing to be the best at what he does, and has the ability to do that. And I'm a really big fan of the kid. I really am. I think he has one of the strongest arms I've seen in a long time, just from a college kid. And I think if we can continue to develop him just a little bit more in size, I think he can just really be something unbelievable for another couple years here. And I think also Austin Simmons he has the ability to grow in size too. But something for me, I've seen him move around in the pocket a little bit over these past couple of weeks, and his ability to throw on the run is really spectacular. So they're two different dynamical quarterbacks, but they also seize the ability to be some really superstar caliber quarterbacks. And they're both go getters, man. And I think we love that at the quarterback position, a guy that can just wants to will their team to win, and the guy that's good at being a leader on and off the field. And that's something that we've seen over the last couple of years from Jaxson Dart improve. So I think this time with the team right now has given them the opportunity to grow in those positions. And it's also, we talked about kind of after the Peach Bowl wanted to hopefully see one of those guys get a little bit of a playing chance when they didn't, unfortunately. But I think that gives them an edge in terms of, okay, now I have to work on different things if I want my future to be the way it is. And so I think we're going to see a little bit more competition from the two of them this year. Look, and I say this because what we saw last year coming from Walker coming in and Spencer Sanders is we saw a lot of correlation of who's going to be QB1, who's going to run this offense. And now I think that standard is kind of what you said. Okay, I think we know Dart is the guy, but how can I prove if he goes down or, when we're up big, when I can get this opportunity, how can I prove that I'm that guy for it? And they really have the opportunity to do that here in the next coming months. So it's going to be fun, and I'm excited for both of them.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis. He's Daylan Flowers. This has been a little bit of Ole Miss football talk as well. Daylan, enjoy the rest of your vacation, and I guess we'll see your normal setup next week, man.
Yeah, I'll be back, and you'll see my DC posters again. And we'll be back and ready and getting into trials again soon. But always good to be here as always.
All right. Safe travels, man.
Appreciate you, man. Howdy toddy, y'all.